What's up, guys? Rick here with your DFS preview for this week's AT&T Byron Nelson, the final event before the PGA Championship. And because of that, because of the proximity, because of the way the rest of the schedule kind of rolled out, this is a pretty good field. 7 of the top 15 players in the world, everybody kind of getting their last licks in before we go to Southern Hills next week. And we have, again, just enough information to be dangerous, right? 1 year's worth of data for TPC Craig Ranch. That's where we're going to go. We'll jump into that in a second, but just a reminder, everything that you see on this video, it's available on my website, RickRunGood.com. It's a very large golf database, essentially only for fantasy and betting and all your nerdy golf data needs. I like it, and I think you will too. I guess let's just jump right into this. TPC Craig Ranch. What do we know? Okay, AT&T Byron Nelson, this event has been played for about 1 billion years. It's been around forever. Last year was the first time they went to Craig Ranch. And it was really easy. Like, let's be real. I think 25 under par was the winning score. It broke the tournament scoring record. It was very wet last year. It's probably not going to be that wet this year, although you are still looking at generous landing areas off the tee. You're looking at large greens over 7,000 or almost 7,000 square feet to hit your second shots into. The regression model that I run that attempts to find the most correlated stats to success. Remember, it's only 1 year's worth of data, so it's a very small sample size. But what we see is that strokes gained approach is the most important stat. In fact, there's only one other course on the PGA Tour schedule in which strokes gained approach was more important. A lot of that can be attributed to the fact that we just have one year's worth of data. Remember last week, I believe for TPC Potomac, we had was it the first or second highest correlated stat in terms of driving accuracy is what I believe it was. But again, that was only 2 years worth of data. So when you get just a few years, it can be a little extreme at times. But I think if you look at it, the larger greens, that ends up turning into, are you hitting it to the correct part of the green? And then you kind of want to consider, 3-putt avoidance a little bit more, because the larger the greens you get, the more 3-putt situations that you do encounter. And I think it's going to play harder, but not significantly harder, maybe 18 to 22 under par, probably not 25 under par unless a bunch of rain gets dumped on the area over the course of the next couple of days. And I still think it's going to be fairly generous for like your TrackMan golfers, right? The guys that are able to hit the correct number, fly at that number. And you're not going to have to worry about the creativity of hitting a bunch of different shots into these greens, letting the ball roll. It's just, I don't think it's going to happen as much. I think it's going to be a pretty easy golf course, all things considered. And I think you're going to be able to make a lot of birdies around here. So we're just kind of looking for approach players. We're looking for guys that are hot coming in. There's plenty of them, right? Jordan Spieth coming in off of victory. Scotty Scheffler coming in off of his last regular individual victory. Played the Zurich Classic in between, but obviously that's a team event. So there's just a lot happening here. I'm going to use the data when we get to the custom model, but remember, again, just 1 year's worth. So let's go to the cheat sheet. And I did make a couple of updates here, and you'll see actually as I record this, I just pushed through a new update. So like what you're even seeing on my screen right now is probably not what you are going to see by the time you go and look at this. Like some of the filters at the top, they haven't come through yet, but they're there. Don't worry. All the data is accurate. So what I've added is driving distance gained and fairways gained to the metrics portion of this. So you can actually see, for example, Scotty Scheffler over his last 24 rounds is 7.5 yards longer off the tee on average than the field that day. So it's all broken down by round. He's a little bit more wild. He's missing 3.5 more fairways. He's missing them. So you can adjust the number of rounds in the upper right-hand corner as you'd like. So just a little bit of more data, hopefully a little bit easier to consume here. 4 golfers over $10,000 at the moment. Scotty Scheffler's 10.9, Justin Thomas is 10.6, Dustin Johnson 10.2, Jordan Spieth $10,100. I can already hear the incoming Texas narratives, right? McKinney's about 30 minutes from Dallas. You're going to get all the Texas narratives, Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth and everybody else here. So let's break this down. Scotty Scheffler's clearly been phenomenal, right? He wins the Masters, wins the WGC match play. I mean, he's gaining 2 strokes to the field over the course of his last 24 rounds. He's well-rounded, all that fun stuff. The guy that I'm laser focused on is Justin Thomas, $10,600. And you know, he has not won in the calendar year yet, which if he doesn't win in 2022, it'll be the first time in like 9 years that he hasn't won a golf tournament. Certainly not for lack of good play or lack of trying. Since the calendar turned, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 top 10 finishes in 9 starts, something like that. He's gaining a ton of strokes on approach. The putter, this is such an encouraging sign as well, right? The fact that 3 of his last 6 starts, he's gained at least 2.5 strokes with the putter. That's very good. Give me a pop JT putting week. You go to the power rankings and you look at the last 24 rounds. Kurt Kitayama has been unbelievable on approach. Justin Thomas, phenomenal. 1.01. Kitayama, almost 1.4. It's actually kind of crazy right now. JT, you combine that with the off the tee play. He's gaining across the board in the last 24. He's better than Kitayama from tee to green. He's much better than Kitayama in terms of strokes gained total, as you can imagine. If we look at the last 24 rounds for everybody in this field, it's Scotty Scheffler, then it's Justin Thomas. That is it. Like very, very small. And JT is not saying Scotty's not hungry. Like JT's hungry, right? JT's a winner. I just love the $300 discount. I mean, I actually want to see what has Justin Thomas's salaries been as of late. Let's look. So he was $11,100 at the RBC Heritage. He was 10-3 at the Masters, always soft pricing there. $11,000 at the Valspar, 10-4 at the Players, 10-7 at the Genesis, $11,000 in Phoenix. So he's 10-6. I mean, it's pretty reasonable. It's on the middle to lower end of the range. Justin Thomas often over $11,000, and usually when he comes down, it's just for the bigger events, which is when you generally get the softer pricing. So now you kind of get an opportunity where, yeah, it's a good field, but it's not a major championship. You know, the PGA Championship, he's probably going to be, well, let's see what he was at last year's PGA Championship before I even just like speculate at this. He was 11,000. Wow, he was 11-3 last year at the PGA Championship. I bet he's cheaper than that this time around, unless he wins the golf tournament this year, because he had just come off the Players win last year as well. But JT's kind of got my full attention here. It just makes too much sense. 10,100 is Jordan Spieth, and I was about to describe him as a sleeping giant. I guess that can't be true when your name's Jordan Spieth and you're coming off of an RBC Heritage victory, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I think there is still a ton of ceiling to tap into. This is, statistically, Jordan Spieth's worst putting season basically ever. In 2012, he only had 16 measured rounds. He lost over a stroke per round with the putter. 13 was like his first full season. This is by far his worst putting season, like as a full-time player. And if you look at the metrics, he lost 2.5 strokes putting at the RBC Heritage. He has now lost in 5 straight. He's now lost in 6 of 7. He's now lost in 7 of 9. It's horrendous. Yet he still has the runner-up finish at Pebble Beach. He has the win at Heritage, losing 2.5 strokes putting. I just think there's still more to squeeze out of this for Spieth, which is really, really scary for everybody else, isn't it? If he's going to gain 4.5 strokes off the tee, he's going to gain nearly 5 on approach. If he's going to gain 2 or 3 around the green, and then he just puts to a 0, like maybe he just wins everything, right? Like do we really think that is Jordan Spieth lost with the putter? Probably not, right? I mean, he is currently, but look at the track record. Look at the track record. I mean, he gained at least a third of a stroke or a quarter of a stroke putting in 21, in 2019, in 2017, in 2016, in 2015, and in 2014. Do we think he's forgotten all of that? I don't know. I just think there's a lot of ceiling to squeeze out of him. I think he's the most volatile guy in the $10,000 range, but my God, like I'm worried that if he gains 3 strokes putting this week, he wins by 6. The 9K range here, really fascinating 9K range. So I think Will Zalatoris is going to be very popular. We'll talk about him in a second. He should be. Hideki Matsuyama at 9,900. played the Masters, finished 14th. He has been battling injury all year long. He's been withdrawing from some events. It's actually been a pretty decent run if you've invested in Hideki in outrights, because you've gotten the Zozo win, you've gotten the Sony Open victory, but then you've got a lot of question marks since then. And because he's 9,900, the most expensive guy in the $9,000 range, I think a lot of people are just going to scroll past, take Xander, Burns, Zalatoris. You can argue Kep, like whatever you want. Look at this. Last 25 rounds. So when he plays awesome. He is maybe one of the few guys in this field that is gaining strokes in all 4 major strokes gain categories, is gaining distance to the field, and is gaining accuracy to the field. Xander Schauffele is another one of the guys at the top of the board, but that's a pretty rare combination, because the guys that hit it long don't necessarily hit it straight, and the guys that are great approach players don't always putt it well, right? So it's pretty rare when you start scrolling through and looking at guys that are literally green across the board. Hideki's one of them. So you kind of have to be willing to swallow whatever risk you think there is. Now, is this Hideki testing the body to see if he can go before the PGA Championship? Obviously, that's much more important to him. But if you think that the last month has been enough time to get right for Hideki, that's the last time we saw him, right? The Masters was a month ago. He's been awesome. Like, this is like, and if we think this course is going to be a TrackMan competition where the best approach players are going to rise to the top, again, that's Hideki. Look at the putter. Look at the putter in 2022. Why has he had so much success? He's putting out of his mind. He's likely figured something out. He's got tangible gains for almost the entirety of the calendar year, especially when you start comparing it to some of the stretches that he had gone through previous to that. So if you can muster it or stomach it, Hideki feels like the X factor this week. It's likely that a lot of the ownership in the $9,000 range gets sucked up by Will Zalatoris. You're going to get the standard Zalatoris love, which he's been great. He's got a bunch of top 10 finishes. You're going to get the Texas narrative boost. You're going to get the approach play boost. Last 3 starts, 5th at the match play, which is technically that means he lost in the Elite 8. 6th at the Masters, 4th at the Zurich Classic with his partner. So you're talking about 3 straight trips to like the top of the leaderboard. He had the runner-up finish at the Farmers where he lost in a playoff to Luke List. He is one of the best approach players that we have. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, I get the love for Will Zalatoris. I'm going to have to wait and see in terms of his ownership. I'd probably just rather bet him outright or bet him in a bunch of matchups. I'm not sure fantasy circles where kind of game theory is going to be the best place to play him, but we'll see. We'll find out Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. RickRunGood YouTube channel on the live chat. We'll know. We can talk through it all, but I just have a feeling that Zalatoris sucks up a lot of the ownership in that 9K range. But look at this. Look at right below Will Zalatoris. Joaquin Niemann's here, 9,300. So I've got the last 25 rounds loaded up. They are quite similar in the last 25 rounds. Niemann is actually gaining 1 more fantasy point gained per round. So fantasy points gained. That is round by round. I'm taking the scoring metrics, how many birdies, how many eagles, all that stuff, not taking into consideration the finishing position, obviously, because it's round by round. And comparing that to the field average for that day, and then saying if you scored 25 and the field average was 20, that's 5 fantasy points gained. So on average, Niemann's been 1 per round better. That's a lot over 25 rounds. They are basically both gaining a half a stroke or more off the tee. So Zalatoris has been a little bit better there. Niemann's been a little bit better on approach. Niemann's been way better around the green, and Zalatoris has been a little bit better in terms of putting. Maybe it's Niemann's week, right? Like, maybe that's the natural pivot. And again, we could talk about this on Wednesday, but I just think there's going to be a lot of Zalatoris love, and you have a guy who's playing very similar, if not better, for $100 cheaper. Tommy Fleetwood worries me a bit at a flat $9,000, which I think is, this could burn me, right? This could really burn me here, but the results are really good for Tommy Lad. I'm kind of worried about how he's doing it. So I have the numbers here somewhere because I wrote this down. Okay, so over his last 6 measured starts, these events right here, Honda Classic through RBC Heritage, throw the Zurich out because we don't have the stat breakdown. He's gained 35 strokes to the field in total. 32 of them are coming via the short game categories, around the green and putting. It's like 90% of his strokes gained are coming in the short game categories. It's concerning for two reasons. One, that's just unlikely to be sustainable, right? He gains 8 strokes putting at the RBC Heritage, finishes T10. The around the green play, I don't think is all that important this week. And if you're tapping into that, which is what he's been awesome at, if you're tapping into that, you're probably in trouble. And then also, I just think that this is like an approach play place. And Tommy's been fine. Tour average, right? It just, if you're gaining 90% of your strokes in the short game categories, I'm quite concerned about that sustaining itself for a long period of time. The 8K range here, this is kind of interesting. Taylor Gooch is 8,600. Feels like we have not talked about Taylor Gooch in a minute, right? Like, my gosh, I feel like I haven't said Gooch's name in quite some time. So 21st at the Zurich Classic, he played with Homa. Homa obviously just coming off the victory. 14th at the Masters, and he just missed out on getting out of his group at the match play. Finished T7 at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and he was horrible at the Players Championship. He could have been on the wrong side of the draw at the Players. I don't remember that. But what do we know about Gooch? He is decently long off the tee, 65th in distance. He is less accurate than that, 86th in accuracy. That's okay. That's perfect around here. You kind of want him on these courses that allow you to kind of hit it anywhere and then tap into the second shot. So again, I don't like these buckets, but when you rank inside the top 50 in 3 different buckets, it's no surprise that you're top 20 in strokes gained approach. And when one of those buckets is the longer bucket, 200 to 225, where he's 14th, that's kind of interesting. Actually, his proximity from 200 to 225 is only a foot and an inch worse than that from 175 to 200. Probably another reason why those things don't matter all that much. Here's what I also love about Gooch. His strokes gained putting number is basically tour average, right? But what you see from him is pop weeks. 5.5 at the Masters, 4.3 at the Players Championship, even gaining 2. When you're as good of a ball approach player as Gooch, that's great. When he won at the RSM Classic, he gains 5. That is in there. A +5 putting week is in the range of outcomes for Taylor Gooch. What I additionally also love, as if there was, but wait, there's more. 3-putt avoidance, 4th on tour. Dude never 3-putts. Never 3-putts. Even when he's not putting well, he doesn't 3-putt. He just hits it to 6 feet and misses the putt. Which is kind of one of the detriments on these greens that skew larger. That 3-putt avoidance becomes a bit more important. So Gooch at 8,600, hoping that everyone's like, I forgot Taylor Gooch existed. I'll just play Johnny Vegas and Jason Kokrak before he heads to Saudi Arabia and all that stuff. That's my hope here. Speaking of Johnny Vegas, I don't think it's the worst spot for him. I'd like to see him drive it a little bit better. He's been tour average over the last 25 rounds off the tee, which is rare for Vegas, but he's been great on approach. He has a top 10 at this event last year at Craig Ranch. He's coming off of 15th at the Wells Fargo Championship. The bottom of this $8,000 range is really enticing. 8,100 Aaron Wise, who I am such a sucker. 8,000 for Adam Hadwin. 8,000 for Cam Champ. I actually, just in terms of recent memory, would look towards the Mexico Open for, hey, generous driving off the tee, longer irons into these greens. Guys that might have had success at Vidanta might also be having success at Craig Ranch. Well, Aaron Wise, who I've bet, I was actually just going through my spreadsheet, I've bet 20 times this year. And if he won this week, I'd probably break even. But 6th in Mexico, 21st at the RBC Heritage. I will not bore you with another Aaron Wise rant. Adam Hadwin, look at this. 10th at the Players, 7th at Valspar, 4th at Valero, 26th at the RBC Heritage, still gaining a ton of strokes on approach, gaining off the tee, gaining across the board. Actually, one of the few guys who's gaining across the board. He's been a half a yard longer than field average in distance. It's good enough. It's a positive. He is gaining across the board. And then Cam Champ, who, again, look at the last 2 starts. Mexico and the Masters, where you can kind of be pretty wayward off the tee and hope the rest of your game figures it out. And I like the price tag on Champ. I'm sure he was more expensive in Mexico. Now you get a better price at $8,000. And if he finishes 6th, you're not feeling disappointed like you were when we saw him in Mexico, because he's a bit more expensive. He was out in the lead for the vast majority. He kind of punted it away at the end. The bottom of the 8K range feels like 3 guys that kind of have me excited. Now, before we jump into the 7K range, let me just run you through a couple of things real quick. We'll just go to the Holy Grail because I know somebody's going to ask, and we can just do it. Let's just fire up this field with, whoops, I'm on the wrong tab. That's why that's not working. Let's just fire up this field with guys that played Craig Ranch last year. Like, let's just look at it. It's obviously 1 year. I'm not going to put a ton of emphasis on it, but I know the questions are going to be asked. So here we go. Best players in this field. It's basically just the leaderboard from last year, right? KH Lee gained 3.8, Sam Burns, Scott Stallings, Charles Schwartzel, Patton Kazire. We'll talk about Kazire in a second. Bramlett, Doc Redman, Johnny Vegas. So we're entering the 7K range. Well, KH Lee's in there, Scott Stallings is in there, Patton Kazire is in there, Seamus Power, 7,900 is next. Those are kind of your best guys in the $7,000 range. Let's go to the trends tool, see if we can find some breakout candidates. So this Who's Hot table basically just compares whatever time frame that you want to each golfer's 100-round baseline, and you can see who's kind of the hottest players in the field. Well, the first 4 hottest golfers are all in this 7K range that we are about to enter. Sepp Straka, Sean Norris, Brandon Wu, Matthew Neesmith. Now, you kind of have to look at how they're doing it. Now, not all of Sean Norris's rounds are PGA Tour measured rounds, so you got to be a little bit careful here. But I would prefer the gains to be coming not in the short game category. So, for example, you can see Sepp Straka's number 1 here, but he's gaining a half a stroke around the green, another 3/4 with the putter. It's like, wow, yeah, that's kind of a lot. He is driving it better. But like someone like Matthew Neesmith, who, yes, of course he's gaining more than his 100-round baseline around the green and with the putter, but combined those two, it's only about a third of a stroke. He's gaining more than a third of a stroke off the tee. He's been a little bit better on approach, which is hard to do because he's already a very good approach player. So kind of looking at how these are happening. Even Kurt Kitayama been phenomenal in the ball striking categories. Basically a stroke per round better over his last 24 than he had compared to his last 100. That's awesome. And you're getting the bonus of a really hot putter as well. So when you combine all that and you look at like who are the most likely guys to break out. So this says who is hitting it well and who is putting well below their baseline. Notice where Jordan Spieth's at, right? He's not in the top left-hand quadrant, but he's in like the far left because he is, hitting it so well. There's room for a little bit of a ceiling. Guys like Alex Noren and Aaron Wise and Harry Higgs and Austin Cook and Bryce Garnett and even Patrick Flavin and Michael Gligic, like those would be the guys that I would be focusing on. Kurt Kitayama. See, you wonder if this is a little bit too lucky with the putter over here. The Kitayamas, the Sepp Strakas, the Brandon Woos, but they're all the names that I mentioned are at least on the better side of the quadrant. Upper left is ideally where you'd like to be. Bottom right is like the worst place that you could be. So as you digest that, here's the 7K range. Noren popped up in a couple of those models. He's made a bunch of cuts in a row. He finished 21st here last year. Seamus Power, very disappointing miscut at the Wells Fargo Championship, finished 9th here last year. Maybe that's a buyback opportunity. This is a zigzag game. And I actually think it's really great that we went Masters, Harbor Town, Mexico, TPC Potomac. Masters is like generous off the tee. RBC Heritage is precision. Mexico, generous off the tee. Potomac, you have to be precise. Now we're going back to generous off the tee, right? So we've just been zigzagging the last couple of weeks, and guys like Mark Leishman, who we correctly identified last week as probably not good plays for TPC Potomac, I think gets a pretty big boost this week. Look at it. Look at the, gaining a yard and a third per round in distance, but losing in terms of he sprays it off the tee. We know that. So go to a place where that's not as important and you start to get excited again. So we're zigzagging here. Mav McNeely, God, I'll continue to lose a lot of money on him as well. Just continues to pile up decent finishes. Did not play Craig Ranch here last year. Again, I won't bore you with the McNeely rant, but everything that I've said over the last 6 months still applies here for McNeely. Harmon's been really stout here, but it's kind of the opposite. Can he play well? Of course, but like look at his big edge. His huge edge is hitting a ton more fairways than everybody else, and he loses distance. Let's flip that around, right? So you look at someone like Lanto, who loses on accuracy, but gains on distance, like Mark Leishman does. You're like, okay, that's probably a better fit. Now, Lanto's gone 15th in Mexico and 6th at TPC Potomac. We might need to deep dive Lanto here because he might be one of the few guys that has 2 top 15s in each of the last 2 weeks and wildly different courses. Let's see what Lanto's been up to on a little bit of a deeper dive here, because we've not done this in a while, and it might be a Lanto kind of week. 3-putt avoidance, very good. 22nd on tour. I talked about the distance and accuracy stuff. Yeah, look at this, man. Oh, he's going to kill us. We're going to spend a lot of money on Lanto, aren't we? +4 off the tee in both Mexico and Maryland. Great. +3 on approach in Mexico. +5.5 on approach at the Wells Fargo. The big loser around the green. I don't care. If you lose around the green, so be it. This isn't an entirely more difficult place. Wow. All right. Well, I'm writing Lanto's name down. I guess I'm going to have to bet him this week. That feels pretty darn good at 7,700. Kurt Kitayama, another one of these guys in the 7K range that has done splendid in the last 2 weeks at 2 different places. Runner-up in a 15th, down on fairways, up on distance. That's good for this week. Approach play, been phenomenal. Let's just pull up the Kitayama. Kitayama gained, last week was his best tee to green week ever. I think it was like 10 strokes. It was like by far his best ever. Now he's a young guy. I don't have a ton of rounds on him. This is his first full season. But look at this. +8 on approach last week. +4 on approach in Mexico. +2 last week off the tee. +3 in Mexico. Wow. Really, really good looking stat profile here. And he's kind of sneaky long, right? Kind of sneaky long. 45th on tour in driving distance. So that probably makes him like 20th in this field. Actually, I guess I could just sort it, but you get my picture here. Really good stuff from Kitayama. I'd probably be willing to take about a half a flyer on Matthew Wolff here. Here's the stat profile. He was basically a 0 off the tee, small loser. Gained on approach for the first time since the Shriners. Gained tee to green for the first time since Houston. So basically the first time in 2022. This is probably one of the better setups for him. Did he play this last year? No, he didn't. Again, it'd be like half a flyer on Matthew Wolff because I still think there's a lot to prove here. But if you're trying to be early on someone, these are the breadcrumbs that when you start seeing get laid down, you think, okay, well, he's had his best week in multiple categories of the year, and this should be a pretty good spot for him. Half a flyer. If you're wondering why Sean Norris is showing up in all like the top strokes gained categories, this is why. So he hasn't played since the Stein City Championship. That was March 20th. He won that event. Before that, he had a couple. These are all Euro Tour events, and he's got 1, 2, 3. He's only played 4 times worldwide this year. But if you go back 5 starts, he has a win, a 9th, and a 3rd. So that's why you see +17 strokes gained tee to green, +9, +9. So it's a really small sample size, and he hasn't played in a while. And now he's coming over to play the PGA Tour. Last time he played on the PGA Tour, T39 at the Zozo, missed the Open Championship. Has he played like I'm sure he has at some point, like a non-WGC regular tour stop on the PGA Tour? Non-major, non-WGC? Maybe he hasn't, actually. It doesn't look like he has. This looks like his first ever regular tour stop. I guess because he's going to play the PGA Championship next week. Interesting. Fascinating stuff. But that's why he's popping up on like strokes gained, like that's why. Briefly mentioned Kazire earlier, and I think it's fair, right? We saw him finish 26th at RBC Heritage. He had a 3rd place finish here last year. He's got a bunch of kind of top 35s, longer than he is accurate, which is good here. He's gaining a half a stroke on approach. The only place he's losing is off the tee. And again, we know it's because he's spraying it. That gets a little bit better here. Generally, over the years, has been someone who outperforms his finishing position with fantasy points. He's kind of a streaky guy, can make birdie streaks, can sneak an eagle in here and there. So I think he's better for fantasy purposes than a lot of other purposes. He's $7,100 down there at the bottom of the 7K range. 6K range. 6K range. Not a ton of stuff to love here. Martin Laird did post top 15s, or excuse me, Steven Yeager, I'm looking at the wrong line, did post 2 top 15s in each of the last 2 weeks, 15th and 6th, trying to turn his season around. And actually, Yeager, let me check something real quick. Yeah, okay, I thought so. Yeager also made the cut at the Zurich. I think he played with Joel Damon. And if you remember, I'll just half pat myself on the back for this one. I looked at that team and I was like, man, Yeager was great on the Corn Ferry last year. This has not been a good season for him. He'll tell you that. I was like, maybe he just needs a format change, right? Maybe he just kind of needs something different. Like some of these guys are so mental and they get caught in this routine. And when you are not playing well, your routine is just not playing well. And then you get to break it up with either a match play event or a team event or something. And now since then, 15th and T6th. He's gained 7 strokes on approach in the last 2 weeks. It's by far his best 2-week performance of his PGA Tour career. A little bit reliant on the short game, but he's been, throughout this bad run, he has been a good short game player. Putter, good as well. So really all we're asking him to kind of do is give us this same stat profile. Give us that same stat profile over the last 2 weeks, and I think you'd be pretty happy about the returns that you'd get from Steven Yeager. What I'll actually do now that I have the salary ranges up here, so I'll just select the $6,000 range, and then we can kind of manipulate some of the data from there. So let's just do everybody in the 6K range, strokes gained total. Well, Mark Hubbard, which we know a lot of that is Corn Ferry stuff. Mac Meisner, 6,200. I imagine that's a lot of Corn Ferry stuff as well. Actually, let's just do weighted. What am I doing here? Weighted strokes gained total, $6,000 range. Willett number 1, 0.86. Hubbard's still up there, but he drops a little bit, 0.84. Then there's a pretty big gap. Those two weighted strokes gained total almost doubling up everybody else, because then it's Piercy at 6,700, Ryder at 6,700. They're like half a stroke gained. Lashley, who withdrew. Would you be willing to go back to Lashley? It was a toe injury, I believe, is what he cited at the Wells Fargo, because he's been great. But I guess you got to be a little bit worried about that. Callum Tarrant, who got off to a hot start last week, finished 56, has made 2 cuts in a row, quite long in the data that we have on him off the tee, and quite inaccurate. Probably a decent setup here. Let's look at the weighted strokes gained approach players here. Donald number 1, Stewart 2, Stenson 3, Doc 4. I mean, I guess it's Laird again, right? I mean, he's really one of the few guys gaining. He's the only guy gaining a third of a stroke off the tee, a third of the stroke on approach. Now he's giving a lot of that back on the putting surfaces, as you can imagine. Jared Wolf, very long, has missed 2 cuts in a row. I'm kind of just doing the research here with you. Long off the tee, gaining 11 yards per round, but he's a 0 off the tee, which means he sprays it. Pretty good on approach, 0 around the green, bad putter. Let me just deep dive his. I'll go run a model. That'll unveil a couple more guys as well. But let's just do a Jared. We've done now both Wolves, so you can't say that I have any Wolf bias here. So 2 cuts in a row at the Wells Fargo and the Mexico Open, just kind of being tour average. He's got a couple of decent finishes. Valero T29, Puerto Rico T28. It's a mixed bag. I would say this is one of the better setups for him, but I don't know how much I'd be investing. I just wanted to kind of see. Okay, let's run a model here. We are in the thick of the season, so let's just say last 16 rounds. Last 16 rounds, we are going to take into account. Okay, let's think about this. I think you want, I guess the longer the better. So let's put 20 on distance. Let's put 25 on weighted strokes gained approach. The 4s and 5s, you gotta kind of dominate. So let's go 15 on par 4 scoring, 15 on par 5 scoring. There was something else I was thinking about here. I've got 25 weights left. I could kind of go for split these 2 buckets, 175 to 200 and then over 200. Let's try that. Let's say 12 on 175 to 200 and 13, my remaining 13 on 200 yards plus. Kind of a little free. It's a little bit freaky for me. On Wednesday when somebody asked me to run another model, I'll probably put birdie or better in. I'll probably do some other stuff, but let's just run this. My number one golfer is, oh boy. All right, that's good. Justin Thomas. JT number 1, Scotty Scheffler number 2, Burns 3, Hideki 4. Hideki's been that good. So no real surprises there. Brooks 5, Xander 6. Vegas is 7. Neiman is 8. So Neiman showing up before Will Zalatoris, who I imagine is going to be very popular. Where is Zalatoris on my ranking here? 22nd. Okay. Little love for Neiman. DJ 9, Gooch 10. Let's go. Aaron Wise 11, Spieth 12, McNeely 13, Kazire 14, Kitayama 15. Okay. Where's my first 6K guy? Hudson Swafford 20th. Then Bramlett 31st. So wow, not a lot of love for the 6K range in this model. Could I load up on a balanced lineup? Could I avoid JT and Scheffler, load up on the 9s and the 7s, like Neiman, Vegas, McNeely? I don't know, something like that. I could. I guess I've got to start figuring out those situations there. Okay, lots more to come. Tuesday and Friday scramble shows, live shows, interactive shows with Andy Lack coming this week, 12 p.m. noon. That's noon Eastern, Tuesday and Friday. Wednesday's the live chat, 3 p.m. Eastern. And should be fun. And then I imagine at some point this week, the PGA Championship salaries are going to come out. So I'll update the cheat sheet and we'll just jump into all that fun stuff. So looking forward to it. Tweet me at RickRunGood. Leave a comment below. Best of luck this week. And I'll talk to you guys later.